Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Babbling Books. If it's your first time here, my name is Elaine and this is going to be my April wrap up. So I read 17 books in April, almost exclusively thrillers and suspense, which is pretty atypical for me. I have a love-hate relationship with thrillers. Usually if I find an author that I like, I read everything that they've published because a lot of the more popular authors, I'm not a huge fan of. Ruth Ware, Alice Feeney, Gillian Flynn. I've tried multiple books of theirs and I ended up DNFing them. So this is a genre that I struggle with. So when I find something I like, I kind of obsess over it. I also started a reading journal this month so that while I'm making these videos, I have something to reference since I use my phone to make these videos. So to start with, I read book 1 of the FBI Profiler series by Lisa Gardner. So I thought about multiple different ways to talk about this book. So it starts out that a woman is in the car and she is driving to meet a man to ask him for a favor. And it's somebody that she's never met. She was given his information from a friend. And you find out within like the first chapter, maybe the first 2 chapters, you find out her history. So she married a man when she was 18 years old. He was an older man. He was a police officer. And come to find out, he was a sociopath. He abused her. He sexually assaulted her. And she was terrified of him. But she put together some information and was able to turn it into the police, and they arrested him for murder. So that's not the plot of the book. That's just her backstory. The plot of the book is her husband has escaped from prison. So the ex-wife has taken their daughter, changed her name, and when she finds out that he's escaped, she knows that he's going to find her and kill her and take their daughter. So she is trying to find this man and ask him to help teach her some survival skills. So this guy was a Marine and then he was a mercenary for a while. And she wants him to teach her how to use a gun, some basic self-defense, and overcome her PTSD. She freezes when she is afraid, and she knows that that will kill her if her husband manages to find her, because she doesn't trust the police to keep her safe. She wants to keep herself safe. There is a romance in this book, and to be honest with you, the guy, the Marine, he's an alcoholic. He's got his own demons. So they're almost kind of dysfunctional together. And despite the fact that this book series, this is book 1 of the FBI Profiler series, the profilers don't even really show up in the book until like the last 5 chapters. So I was on the fence when I finished this. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue the series. But I did. But that was given a 3-star rating by me. And this is the journal page that I did. And yeah, I mean, it was okay. 3 stars. And then after that, I read a nonfiction book called Fed Up by Gemma Hartley. And this is Emotional Labor, Women, and the Way Forward. So this is an exploration of the way that society puts an unseen burden on women, that it's done thoughtlessly. And this is very much Emma Hartley's journey with this. It's not so much this massive social study. It's Emma Hartley and her husband. And to give you an example of what she means when she says emotional labor, it's things like, why is it assumed that the women of the office will plan the birthday parties? Or why is it assumed that the women of the office will cut the birthday cake? Why is it that, the women, the wives, the moms, they're expected to know where everything is in the house, despite the fact that, I'm assuming your husband has lived there as long as you have. And she even had some interesting little details, like when she was like a junior or senior in high school, she and her boyfriend went to a birthday party, and it was assumed that she would get the present and that she would get the card, and she would write that it was for both of them. And just like things like that, which I mean, like I tell my husband what we're getting the kids for Christmas. I ask him his opinion. I ask him if there's anything that he wants to get the kids, and sometimes there is, but the bulk of that remains my responsibility. Or, honey, where are the scissors? Well, they're in the same damn place they've been for the past 3 years. We just moved to a new house. I mean, so it's like stuff like that. Or asking my husband, hey, will you do a load of towels? Well, that he'll start the wash, but I have to remind him, hey, babe, put the clothes in the dryer and don't forget to empty the lint trap. And then an hour later, hey, honey, the clothes are probably ready to be, folded and put up. And so rather than issuing him a task, which in itself is emotional labor because I'm the one having to pay attention to the fact that we're low on towels, and rather than knowing that he'll see it through from start to finish, I have to remind him of all of the steps. And so my husband had some really interesting conversations as I was reading this book. I mean, I tabbed it like crazy. And I would read him some of the sections that I circled or underlined. And I asked him what he thought. So like one of the things is, so her husband forgot to do something. And his response was, why didn't I just ask him to do it if it needed to be done? Why was everything he did never enough? And then her thoughts are, why do I need to ask you to do everything? How does pointing out this problem negate all the other things that you do? How is that even relevant? So that was really interesting because that was something that we experienced in our marriage when I would say something like, honey, I asked you to put the car tag on the car a week ago. We're going to get a ticket. And I'm frustrated. And yes, I can put the car tag on myself. I just feel like I'm going to end up with all of these comments about like gender roles. But anyway, and he'll get frustrated, like, and his response is, well, why don't you just like remind me? And I'm thinking to myself, like, why do I need to remind you? Like, I asked you to do it. That means it's your problem now, not my problem. And then he gets defensive because it's like, well, I already do, and then I'm like, well, honey, just because you like forgot one thing, it doesn't negate all the positive things that you've done. Anyway, it's just this really complicated issue, but I did enjoy the book. I did enjoy the conversations with my husband. And it was really interesting too, because we sort of framed it in a, what can we do different with the way we're raising our children to help them, and their future relationships. And this book does have discussions, about, whether, it's a man and a woman in a relationship, or two men in a relationship, or two women in a relationship. And there's discussions of, is this different for people of color? So there were a lot of really interesting aspects, and I really do recommend this. I thought it was a pretty good conversation starter, really. And I called my friends multiple times, my girlfriends, and read them some stuff, and they were like, oh my God, exactly. Anyway, so the next book that so I started book 2 of the FBI Profiler series by Lisa Gardner, and I ended up DNFing it because the plot centers around a school shooting. I tried to read it. It was causing me so much anxiety. I wasn't enjoying it. And my husband was like, just like read it on Wikipedia and go to the next book. And so that's what I did. It caused a few minor little hiccups, but I got over it. So I can't really give you any information about the second book, because I skipped it. So then I read book 3 of the FBI Profiler series. So an FBI profiler is grieving a personal loss, and he starts to suspect that this accidental death of somebody he loves was in fact a murder. So he contacts somebody from his past, a woman named Rainey, and asks her to look into this accident. And she decides to humor him because he's grieving. And she starts to realize that he may have a point, that this may have been a murder. And they sort of stumble onto a serial killer who uses accidents to cover up murder. So, really interesting. I thought the killer was incredibly smart. It's told in the third person, but you do read things from the killer's point of view, which adds like a super creep factor. And then you're reading from the point of view of the soon-to-be victim, and you're just like wanting to scream at them, he's not who he says he is, he's gonna kill you. Like, oh my God. And you're picking up on all these little things that they're completely oblivious to. So I really did enjoy this one, and it sold me on the series. And so this is the little reading page I did for it. I ended up giving it a 3.5-star rating. But it was really good. And then I read The Favor by Nicci French. So Nicci French is a husband and wife team. Their books mostly seem to take place in London. So this is about a woman who is a doctor, and she is working her shift one day, and her ex-boyfriend from college that she hasn't seen in a decade shows up and asks her for a favor, but it's an unknown favor. She doesn't know what the favor is. So she's promising to do something for him, but she doesn't know what it is, which is like really stupid. But so he says, meet me at this place at this unknown time. So she lies to her fiance because she doesn't want to explain anything. She shows up at this place. The ex-boyfriend never shows up, but the police do. The ex-boyfriend's been murdered. And of course, the police, her fiance, they're all thinking that they were having an affair. They think that she might have murdered him. And you as the reader are still completely clueless as to why any of this happened. And I just kept wondering the entire time, why would somebody who is so intelligent, a doctor, do something so incredibly stupid? But she did. And you do eventually find out why, and you eventually find out who murdered him and things like that. But the majority of the book is centered around the ex-boyfriend's house. So he has a wife, he has a son, and like 4 or 5 people living in this sort of rundown home. And they're all weird and quirky, but bordering on unbelievable. And it was just a train wreck. I was intrigued enough by the plot to finish the book, but I can't really say that I enjoyed it. I didn't like any of the characters, like not a single one of them. It's not my favorite Nicci French book, to be honest. I ended up giving it a 3-star rating. And this is the journal page that I did for it. And I did listen to this on audio. I like Nicci French's books on audio. And then I read the 4th book of the FBI Profiler series by Lisa Gardner. This one is called The Killing Hour. And one of the FBI profilers, his daughter is at the FBI Academy, and she stumbles across a dead body on the Academy grounds, and she becomes involved with solving this murder. There is a romance, and I enjoyed the romance. It's not a main focus, but it was believable. I could see those two characters together. I liked those two characters, so that was a solid plus for this one. You see things from the killer's point of view, like all of Lisa Gardner's books are told in the third person. And this is one of those books where when you put it down, you can't wait to pick it up again, because you're just so embroiled in finding out what's going to happen next. So I ended up giving this a 4-star rating. And I highly recommend this series. And then I read book 5 of the FBI Profiler series by Lisa Gardner. This one is called Gone. So an FBI profiler gets a phone call in the middle of the night, and he's told that his wife's car has been found and she is nowhere to be seen. So it's this missing person case is not in a federal jurisdiction, so they do not allow the FBI profiler to be an active part of the investigation. Of course, he ends up becoming a part of it anyway. And you see things from the point of view of the kidnapper, from Rainey's point of view, so you know what's happening to her as she's, been kidnapped. And I really, really did enjoy this one as well. It was another 4-star rating for me, and I listened to this one on audio. So that was Gone, by Lisa Gardner. And then book 6 of the FBI Profiler series. This one is called Say Goodbye. This one still lives up here for free. So the killer is obsessed with spiders. So they play a predominant part in the book, which is just, but I really did enjoy that little extra bit of like creepiness. So it's told in the third person, and you see things from the point of view of the killer. There is a child that has been taken and is being abused. You do see things from the child's perspective. That was very difficult. The killer and kidnapper's perspective is just disgusting. I mean, it was just so hard to read because you don't want those thoughts in your head. But it was still a really good story. And I wanted to know what was going to happen to this child. But massive trigger warning, because not only is there child abuse, there's the sexual assault of a child. It's not incredibly detailed, but you are left with no doubt of what is being done to this child. So like massive trigger warnings. But I really did enjoy the book. And this is the page I did for it. And I really enjoyed being able to draw these spiders on here. I thought that was cool. So, and then I read book 7 of the FBI Profiler series. Right Behind You is the title. And the FBI Profiler, an FBI Profiler, has adopted a teenage girl that he has been fostering for a few years. And at this point he's retired, but he still works for the local police as a consultant. And he receives a phone call that there has been a mass shooting at a gas station within a few miles of where he and his daughter live. And he realizes that the shooter is his adopted daughter. It's her brother. And so now he's wondering if he's going to come after his sister, if, his adopted daughter is in danger. And they start having to put the pieces together of what caused this child, I think he's 17, to do such a horrific thing. What is his goal? And then you see things from the point of view of the sister. You see things from the point of view of the teenage shooter. I mean, just like all kinds of different little aspects and puzzle pieces. I really enjoyed this one too. It was really nifty to see him parent, and it was interesting to see his personality and this teenage girl's personality, how they work together. And it was interesting to find out about the brother and their background together, because the adopted daughter barely has any memory of her childhood, whereas the brother has quite a few. So I really enjoyed that one, and that is right behind you, and this is the journal page I did. I had a lot of fun with that one too. So then, okay, so this is a spinoff from the FBI Profiler series. So Dee Dee Warren shows up as a detective or as a state police officer. She shows up in a few of the other books, but this is her first book of her own series. So a woman calls 911 and says that her husband has a gun and won't let her leave, won't let her take their son, and that she thinks that he's going to kill them. So the SWAT team rolls out, and the SWAT team sniper, Bobby Dodge, ends up shooting and killing her husband. And so he's under investigation. She's under investigation, and the police start to suspect that she set this up and used Bobby Dodge as a way to murder her husband. And then they start to suspect that maybe Bobby Dodge was in on it. And so Bobby Dodge, which I have the hardest time with that name. Anyway, Bobby Dodge ends up investigating on his own, even though he's suspended, because he is very concerned with not only he might lose his job, but he might actually go to prison for murder. And there's like accusations that the wife is suffering from Munchausen's and is abusing her son. And you just kind of don't know what has actually happened. And you just follow along with Bobby Dodge as he figures out whether or not he, was used to murder someone. So that was actually pretty good. I gave that a 3-star rating. That's Alone. This is the journal page I did. And that's book 1 of the Dee Dee Warren series. And then I read book 2 of the Dee Dee Warren series. This one is called Hide. So a girl is found in an underground bunker, and she had been taken by a man and sexually abused, and she was able to identify that person, and he went to prison. So that's the background. The actual plot is a underground bunker is discovered on the grounds of a closed mental institution, and the police see similarities between this new case where these 5 girls were found mummified in this underground bunker, and this case from the past where the girl escaped and identified her kidnapper. And they find the girl, who's all grown up now, and they start asking her questions, trying to see if there's any connection. So that was really interesting. Not a huge fan of Dee Dee Warren. I think she's a little rough around the edges in a way that's borderline obnoxious. But I really did enjoy the story and the plot. So I ended up giving it a 4-star. And this is the journal page I did for it. And then I read book 3 of the Dee Dee Warren series. This one is called The Neighbor. Oh, okay. So I was really excited about this one. So in one of the FBI Profiler books and the other series, there's a character, and at the end of the book, he was like a side character. And at the end of the book, there's like an epilogue that sort of, you just know that this character is going to show up sometime in the future as a main player. And he shows up in this book, The Neighbor, and his wife is missing. And Dee Dee Warren suspects that the husband has something to do with it. But you know, from the husband's point of view, that he doesn't have anything to do with it. And then there are little flashbacks to the wife. So you have the current timeline where she's missing and they're trying to find her. And then you'll have something from the past. And as the two meet up, you find out what has happened to this wife and why she's gone missing and who's responsible and all those things. So it was really, really good. So I ended up giving this one a 4-star rating. This is the journal page for it. That was, I want to say The Neighbor was probably one of my top 3 from Lisa Gardner. And then I read book 7 of the FBI Profiler series. That's the wrong page. Sorry. So then I read another series by Lisa Gardner. It's book 1 of the Tessa Leoni series. So Dee Dee Warren is in this one too. So Tessa Leoni is a deputy, and she shoots her husband with her service revolver and claims that she was defending herself, that she's a battered wife. But the biggest issue is her daughter is missing. And the people investigating her think that she either kidnapped her daughter or has killed her. And it's told from multiple points of view. So you know from Tessa's point of view that she did not take her daughter. She doesn't know where her daughter is. But you don't really know anything about what happened between her and her husband. So Dee Dee Warren is focused on finding the girl and prosecuting Tessa as a murderer. And Tessa is focused on finding her daughter. And I really did enjoy this one because it's one of those books where I really wasn't able to guess what had happened and who was bad and who was telling the truth. So this is the journal page for it. I ended up giving it a 3-star rating because it was very good. And then I read a standalone called The Wives by Tarryn Fisher. So this was fascinating. So this man has 3 wives, and we are reading from the point of view of one wife, and her day with her husband is on Thursday. So we know her as Thursday. She knows the other 2 wives as Monday and Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday. I think it's Monday and Wednesday. And that's all she knows, really. She talks to her husband about them. Like she knows one of them's expecting a baby. So she says, you know, how was Monday doing? Has she gotten over her morning sickness? When is the baby due? But other than that, she really doesn't know anything. She's never met them. She doesn't know what they look like. She doesn't really know their names. She calls them by their day. Well, one day she finds a receipt in her husband's pocket for a doctor's visit. And she finds the name of one of the wives. She looks her up on Facebook, and then she starts to watch her, and then she finds out the name of the second wife, and she starts to watch her. I mean, it was really intriguing. I had no idea where the book was going, but I could not put it down. I really, really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4-star rating. And to be honest with you, I think it actually might deserve a 4.5-star rating. But I really did enjoy this. So that's The Wives by Tarryn Fisher. This is the journal page I did for it. And then I read a YA thriller called Little Monsters by Kara Thomas. So after I read The Wives, I had this huge book slump. Everything I picked up just wasn't as good. And I just couldn't concentrate on anything. And I remembered that I had bought this book a while ago, and I decided to give it a try, and I'm really glad I did because it pulled me out of my book slump. So this is a story of 3 best friends, and one of them goes missing. And I was pretty intrigued by the plot. I wanted very much to know what had happened. And the ending surprised me, which is always a bonus. And I ended up giving it a 4-star rating. This is the book page I did for it. I had a lot of fun with this one. So yeah, that was really good. I do recommend that one. And then I read, what is it? That Weekend by Kara Thomas. So this is another YA thriller with multiple points of view. A teenage girl wakes up in the woods with no memory of the last few days. How was she injured, and where are her missing friends? So this is told in flashbacks and the current timeline as well. And my overall feeling about this book was that it was overly complicated, convoluted, and just really dramatic, if I'm honest. Like, it felt like some sort of like soap opera special or a Lifetime movie. Like, it just bordered on being unrealistic to me. I just really didn't get along with it. I ended up giving it a 2.5-star rating. And that's the first time that I can recall not really enjoying a Kara Thomas book. But this is the page I did for it. And I have not filled out my reading journal for the last 2 books that I read. So I read You'll Be the Death of Me by Tarryn McManus. So this is a YA thriller. And let's see, 3 teenagers, I think they're seniors. When they were in middle school, they weren't friends, and they were on a field trip, and they all 3 decided to skip this field trip together, and they had a blast, and it became known as the perfect weekend. And they were inseparable for years before they finally sort of just went their own way. So by the time the book starts, that timeline, they are seniors, and they're sort of like strangers to each other. And for 3 very separate reasons, they decide not to go to school. And at the same time, they're all in the parking lot, and they skip together. And they come across the body of a classmate, and they flee the scene. So not only are they concerned with damage control, things are completely just out of control. There's speculation that they missed school and this guy was killed. Maybe they're involved. The media gets involved. They're scrambling to cover their asses. They're trying to figure out who the murderer is. There's all kinds of secrets revealed about these 3 people to each other. So it was really good. I did enjoy that one a lot. And then I read Out of the Ashes by Kara Thomas. So Kara Thomas, I thought only wrote YA thrillers, but this one is actually an adult thriller. It's a new release, and so this woman is a nurse, and when she was a child, her family was murdered, and then the house was set on fire. And she goes back to her hometown to see her uncle, who is dying of cancer. And she always thought, as did a lot of people, that the person responsible for the death of her family members was a police officer who is known locally as being abusive and just a brute and abusing his power. And she is contacted by a federal investigator who says he's reopening her family's case. So she starts becoming involved in the investigation. Secrets are revealed. You find out what happened to her family. Yada, yada, yada. It read just like her YA books, except there was sex. And the characters felt almost as juvenile as her YA characters. There was so much back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, like physically. You know, she would like try to go home and then realize that she didn't leave the key for the realtor. So she'd have to drive 2 hours back. And then she would have to like show up to let the Salvation Army inside to get the couch. I mean, it was just, I don't know. It was kind of structured weird. And I felt like she was constantly in the car. And I felt like it was like she'd show up to let the Salvation Army in, even though she thought she was never going to have to come back to this house. And then like a letter, this doesn't actually happen, but I'm giving you like a general idea. So, and then when they take the couch, she realizes there's a letter under the couch and it reveals something to her. I don't know. It just felt sort of forced. I didn't really enjoy this one. I ended up giving it a 2.5 star rating. I will say that I didn't guess the ending, which is always enjoyable, but it didn't make up for the middle of the book, the bulk of the book. So yeah, so that's what I read in April. Please recommend more thrillers to me because I'm really enjoying them. If you have an author who reminds you of Tarryn Fisher, please let me know who it is because I've loved every one of her books. And that's it. Bye.